Frodo was waiting on the step, smiling but looking rather tired and worried. He welcomed all the callers, but he had not much more to say than before. His reply to all inquiries was simply this: "Mr. Bilbo Baggins has gone away, as far as I know, for good." Some of the visitors he invited to come inside, as Bilbo had left messages for them. Inside, in the hall, there was piled a large assortment of packages and parcels, and some articles of furniture. On every item there was a label tied. There were several labels of this sort: "For Adelard Took," "For his very own," from Bilbo, on an umbrella. Adelard had carried off many unlabelled ones. "For Dora Baggins, in memory of a long correspondence, with love, from Bilbo," on a large waste-paper basket. Dora was Drogo's sister, and the eldest surviving female relative of Bilbo and Frodo. She was 99 and had written reams of good advice for more than half a century. "For Milo Burrows, hoping it will be useful, from B.B," on a gold pen and ink bottle. Milo never answered his letters. "For Angelica's use, from Uncle Bilbo," on a round convex mirror. She was a young Baggins, and too obviously considered her face shapely. "For the collection of Hugo Bracegirdle, Bracegirdle," from a contributor, on an empty bookcase. Hugo was a great borrower of books, and worse than usual at returning them. "For Lobelia Sackville Baggins, as a present," on a case of silver spoons. Bilbo believed that she had acquired a good many of his spoons while he was away on his former journey. Lobelia knew that quite well. When she arrived later in the day, she took the point at once, but she also took the spoons. This is only a small selection of the assembled presents. Bilbo's residence had gotten rather cluttered up with things in the course of his long life. It was a tendency of hobbit holes to get cluttered up, for which the custom of giving so many birthday presents was largely responsible. Not, of course, that the birthday presents were always new. They were one or two mathams of forgotten uses that had circulated all around the district. But Bilbo had usually given new presents, and kept those that he received. The old hole was now being cleared a little. Every one of the various parting gifts had labels, written out personally by Bilbo, and several had some point or some joke. But of course, most of the things were given where they would be wanted and welcomed. The poor hobbits, and especially those of Bagshot Row, did very well. Old Gaffer Gamgee had got 2 sacks of potatoes, a new spade, a woolen waistcoat, and a bottle of ointment for creaking joints. Old Rory Brandybuck, in return for much hospitality, got a dozen bottles of old wine yarns, a strong red wine from the South Farthing, and now quite mature, as it had been laid down by Bilbo's father. Rory quite forgave Bilbo, and voted him a capital fellow after the first bottle. There was plenty of everything left for Frodo, and of course all of the chief treasures, as well as the books, pictures, and more than enough furniture, were left in his possession. There was, however, no sign nor mention of money or jewellery. Not a penny piece or a glass bead was given away. Frodo had a very trying time that afternoon. A false rumour that the whole household was being distributed free spread like wildfire, and before long the place was packed with people who had no business there, but could not be kept out. Labels got torn off and mixed, and quarrels broke out. Some people tried to do swaps and deals in the hall, and others tried to make off with minor items not addressed to them, or with anything that seemed unwanted or unwatched. The road to the gate was blocked with barrows and handcarts. In the middle of the commotion, the Sackville Bagginses arrived. Frodo had retired for a while, and left his friend Merry Brandybuck to keep an eye on things. When Otho loudly demanded to see Frodo, Merry bowed politely. "He is indisposed," he said. "He is resting." "Hiding, you mean," said Lobelia. "Anyway, we want to see him, and we mean to see him. Just go and tell him so." Mary left them a long while in the hall, and they had time to discover their parting gift of spoons. It did not improve their tempers. Eventually they were shown into the study. Frodo was sitting at a table with a lot of papers in front of him. He looked indisposed to see Sackville Baggins's at any rate, and he stood up, fidgeting with something in his pocket. But he spoke quite politely. The Sackville Bagginses were rather offensive. They began by offering him bad bargain prices, as between friends, for various valuable and unlabelled things. When Frodo replied that only the things specially directed by Bilbo were being given away, they said the whole affair was rather fishy. "Only one thing is clear to me," said Otho, "and that is that you are doing exceedingly well out of it. I insist on seeing the will." Otho would have been Bilbo's heir, but for the adoption of Frodo. He read the will carefully and snorted. It was, unfortunately, very clear and correct, according to the legal customs of hobbits, which demand, among other things, 7 signatures of witnesses in red ink. "Foiled again," he said to his wife, "and after waiting 60 years. Spoons? Fiddlesticks." He snapped his fingers under Frodo's nose and stumped off. But Lobelia was not so easily got rid of. A little later, Frodo came out of the study to see how things were going on, and found her still about the place, investigating nooks and corners and tapping the floors. He escorted her firmly off the premises after he had relieved her of several small but rather valuable articles that had somehow fallen inside her umbrella. Her face looked as if she was in the throes of thinking out a really crushing parting remark, but all she found to say, turning round on the step, was, "You'll live to regret it, young fellow. Why didn't you go too? You don't belong here. You're no Baggins. You're a brandy-buck." "Did you hear that, Mary? That was an insult, if you like," said Frodo, as he shut the door on her. "It was a compliment," said Mary Brandybuck, "and so, of course, not true." Then they went around the hall and evicted 3 young hobbits, 2 boffins and a bolger, who were knocking holes in the walls of one of the cellars. Frodo also had a tussle with one young Sancho Proudfoot, old Odo Proudfoot's grandson, who had begun an excavation in the larger pantry where he thought there was an echo. The legend of Bilbo's gold excited both curiosity and hope, for legendary gold, mysteriously obtained if not positively ill-gotten, is, as everyone knows, anyone's for the finding unless the search is interrupted. When he had overcome Sancho and pushed him out, Frodo collapsed on a chair in the hall. "It's time to close the shop, Mary," he said. "Lock the door and don't open it to anyone today, not even if they bring a battering ram." Then he went to relieve himself with a belated cup of tea. He had hardly sat down when there came a soft knock at the door. Lobelia again, most likely, he thought. She must have thought of something really nasty and have come back to say it. It can wait. He went on with his tea. The knock repeated, much louder, but he took no notice. Suddenly the wizard's head appeared at the window. "If you don't let me in, Frodo, I shall blow your door right down your hole and out through the hill," he said. "My dear Gandalf, half a minute," cried Frodo, running out the room to the door. Come in, I thought it was Lobelia." "Then I forgive you, but I saw her some time ago, driving a pony trap towards Bywater with a face that could curdle new milk." "She had already nearly curdled me. Honestly, I nearly tried on Bilbo's ring. I longed to disappear." "Don't do that," said Gandalf, sitting down. "Do be careful of that ring, Frodo. In fact, it is partly about that I have come to say a last word."